Chapter 13. The Bonepit. The iron orchid slipped from real space orbit above Kiln, arriving just as the first pale light of the local star spilled across the planet's battered horizon. Finn stood on the flight deck, gazing through the viewport as the dead world turned beneath them. Kiln was unchanged. From orbit, it offered no vibrant blues or greens, only a battered sphere of rust-red dust and chasms drowning in shadow. "Atmospheric entry in 2 minutes," Jake called out from the pilot's chair, his hands steady on the analog controls. "Sensors are sweeping the surface. I'm painting a whole lot of nothing down there, Captain. No active transponders, no orbital traffic, no thermal blooms." "Good," Amara said, leaning forward in the command chair. "Take us down slow. Doc, keep an eye on the long-range scanners. If Athelgard managed to slip a drone into this sector, I want to know before we break the cloud cover." "Scanners are clear," Doc confirmed quietly. The ship shuddered violently as it hit the upper atmosphere, the friction painting the viewport in streaks of superheated orange plasma. The Orchid was built to take a beating, but the descent was rough. Kiln didn't have a weather control grid, and the atmosphere was thick with abrasive dust and turbulent thermals. As they punched through the thick, rust-colored cloud layer, the surface of the planet finally revealed itself. Below them sprawled a breathtaking monument to corporate greed. The land below was no longer natural. It was a wasteland carved with jagged geometric wounds where mountain ranges had been methodically consumed by plasma cutters and excavators. Enormous circular strip mines plunged miles down, their terraced rims resembling the rings of a colossal, lifeless amphitheater. And scattered across the desolation, half buried in the shifting red dunes, were the colossal, rusted skeletons of the old mining machines. They were towering, insectoid structures of durasteel and iron, abandoned 50 years ago when the corporations realized it was cheaper to leave them behind than to haul them back to Draven. "Ancestors preserve us," Tess murmured, stepping onto the flight deck and staring out the viewport. "They really picked the bones clean, didn't they?" "They did," Finn replied, his voice tight. He stepped up behind Jake's chair, pointing a finger at a specific section of the tactical map. "Take us to these coordinates. Sector 4G, the Bonepit." Jake banked the heavy blockade runner, the thrusters screaming as they fought against the atmospheric drag. They skimmed low above the wrecked terrain, the Orchid's shadow gliding over rusted machine corpses. Nearing Sector 4G, the landscape transformed, the open strip mines collapsing into a vast, jagged canyon system, a raw, gaping wound slashed deep into the planet's crust. "There," Finn pointed, leaning closer to the glass. "See that ridge? Just below the remains of the primary processing plant." Jake squinted through the swirling red dust. Jutting out from the edge of the canyon was a massive, overhanging slab of rock, shadowed entirely by the rusted, towering ruins of an old refinery facility. "It's a tight squeeze, Finn," Jake warned, his hands flying across the thruster controls as he brought the ship into a hover. "The crosswinds down in that canyon are going to be brutal." "The Orchid can take it," Amara said firmly. "Put us under the overhang." Jake said nothing. He coaxed the maneuvering jets, easing the blockade runner into the deep, shadow-choked chasm. Wind shrieked around the hull, hurling clouds of red dust against the viewport. But Jake's hands never wavered. With a heavy, echoing crunch of durasteel against rock, the landing struts deployed and locked onto the canyon floor. "We're down," Jake exhaled, pulling off his tinted goggles and wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Power down all primary systems." Amara ordered immediately. Cut the engines and drop the thermal shielding to minimum. I want this ship looking like a piece of dead, rusted rock. The deep, reassuring thrum of the Orchid's engines faded, leaving the flight deck drowned in eerie silence. Only the faint red glow of emergency lights lingered. Finn gazed through the viewport at the rusted canyon walls looming close around the ship. The Bonepit's silence pressed in, absolute and unbroken. "We're home," Finn murmured. For the first time in days, the crew of the Iron Orchid allowed themselves to breathe. Hidden deep in the canyon's shadows, buried beneath the rusted, towering ruins of the old refinery, they were completely invisible. Athelgard could sweep the sector 100 times and never find them. For the next 2 days, the ship ran on minimal power, the crew eating, sleeping, and recovering from the adrenaline-fueled escape from Relay 9. On the third morning, the endless dust storms that had howled across Kiln's surface finally relented. Finn was sitting in the quiet, red-lit galley, staring blankly at a datapad, when Ellie shuffled into the room. She was wearing her oversized flight jacket and holding a small, insulated breather mask in her hand. "The wind stopped," Ellie said quietly, looking up at him. "Amara said it was safe to open the secondary airlock. I want to see it." Finn set the datapad down. "See what?" "Where you grew up," she replied. "Leon told me stories about this place while we were hiding. He said it was just dust and ghosts, but he said you two were kings of the Bonepit when you were my age." Finn felt a tight, painful smile touch his lips. "We certainly thought we were." He stood up, grabbing his own breather mask and his worn leather jacket. "Come on, I'll show you my kingdom." They cycled through the secondary airlock, stepping out onto the lowered cargo ramp. The air outside was freezing and tasted faintly of rust and iron. The sky above the canyon was a bruised, hazy crimson, filtering the weak sunlight through layers of atmospheric dust. Around them, the colossal, silent legs of the abandoned mining machines towered like the bones of dead gods. Finn led Ellie down the ramp, their boots crunching softly into the red dirt. They walked in silence for half an hour, navigating the scattered debris of the old refinery area, until they reached a wide, flat ledge overlooking a vast, excavated basin of the Bonepit. "It's so quiet," Ellie murmured, pulling her jacket tight against the chill. "It feels like the whole planet is sleeping." "It's been sleeping for a long time," Finn agreed softly, looking out over the desolation. "But it was a good place to hide when we were kids." Ellie gazed into the enormous basin, her small hands twisting nervously in her jacket pockets. She drew a deep, trembling breath, a white plume blooming out of her breather mask in the frigid air. "Finn," she said, her voice dropping to a quiet, serious whisper. "I need to tell you something. I didn't tell Amara because I was afraid she wouldn't understand. But Leon knew." Finn frowned, turning to look at her. "Knew what, Ellie?" She hesitated, her dark eyes dropping to the red dirt. "I didn't sneak past the guards at the facility to get on the silly goose." "What do you mean?" Finn asked, stepping closer. "Leon smuggled you out." "He did," Ellie said quickly, looking back up. "But I didn't walk up the ramp. I couldn't get past the outer perimeter fence and the guards, so I opened a gate. I landed inside Leon's cargo hold." Finn froze, the freezing wind suddenly feeling entirely inconsequential. "A gate? You mean—" "A jump gate," Ellie confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. "I opened a tear in the facility, and I stepped through it. Finn stared at the girl, his mind struggling to process the sheer, staggering magnitude of what she had just said. He dropped slowly to his knees in the red dust, bringing himself to eye level with her. "You can open a gate?" Finn breathed, his voice rough with absolute astonishment. "Without the amplification machine?" Ellie nodded slowly, a fierce, quiet pride mixing with her fear. "Not for something big. I can't move a ship, but for something small, like me, yes, I can do it alone. The more they made us practice on Umbrix, the better I got. I figured out how to lock on to coordinates without the machine, but I never let Miss Church see. I didn't want them to know how strong I was getting. I waited until I knew Leon was docked at the supply depot, and I jumped. I had a good feeling about him, and the ship. I liked the name. Silly Goose made me laugh inside." Finn rocked back on his heels, staring at Ellie with raw, unfiltered awe. She was no mere victim. She was the most powerful, dangerous asset Athelgard had ever made, and she had outwitted them all, guided only by a laugh and a hunch. "If you can do that," Finn said slowly, his brain racing through the tactical implications, "why didn't you just jump off Draven? Why stay on the Goose?" "Because jumping hurts," Ellie admitted, touching her temple lightly. "It makes my nose bleed, and it makes the shadows notice me. I didn't know where else to go. I just knew Leon was safe." She took a step closer to Finn, her small jaw setting with sudden, unwavering determination. "Finn, if we want to go back there, we don't need to use guns," Ellie said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We don't need Raffi's cannons and a lot of noise. I can get us in. I can open a gate directly into the holding cells. We can rescue Jade and James without them even knowing we breached the hull." Finn stared at her, the impossible shape of the plan settling in his mind. A perfect, invisible infiltration. "And," Ellie added, a dark, brilliant spark lighting up her eyes, "we can take the machine." "The amplifier?" Finn asked, his pulse quickening. Ellie nodded firmly. "If we steal the machine, they can't use it anymore. And, if I plug into it, I can open a gate big enough for the Orchid. We won't need the Syndicate relays. I can jump us completely out of the solar system."